Of course, we're looking at matters elections and also looking at the election security system as well. We're joined this morning, as I mentioned earlier, by Dr. Shem Ochuodho, who's a global leader, Kenya Diaspora Alliance, and also an expert on computer science. Also, we have with us Irungu Houghton, who is Associate Director of Society International Development. Regina Opondo, she's the chair of ELOG, that is Election Observers Group. And we have also Chris Msando, who's a Data Center and Infrastructure Manager, IEBC. Also, we have with us Professor Julius Nyamweya, who is Election Technology Expert. Good morning, gentlemen and lady. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning to you.
Right, thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning. And we want to really drill deeper today and see if, as a country, we are ready for the general election. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, there has been a lot of debate on whether we should go manual or use the electronic system, and a raft of other issues as well. But first off is the issue of the presidential announcement, where they say we're not going to have a periodic, announcement, but we have just one announcement, which will be a one fell swoop to give who will be the president of Kenya come the 8th of August. From that standpoint, let's begin with you, Regina. Do you think this in any way will heighten tension in the country? Should we go the periodic announcement that has been there before, or we just wait for that one big announcement? We'll be twiddling our thumbs in between. Everyone is having all this anxiety and antsy. What do you think?
I'm not sure about the reasoning behind the declaration to only do the one announcement at the end.
Yes.
My feeling is that it creates a little bit of a mystery and a little bit of tension.
Yes.
Especially if you consider the fact that at the constituency level or at the polling station, you have agents there, you have observers there, and does it mean that the officer at the polling station, once they announce their results, that doesn't count?
Yes.
Because people will hear those results. So in a way, you'll already have various groups starting to do their own tallying and figuring out what's happening. So I'm not very clear on why the decision to do just one announcement at the end rather than periodic or updates on where we've reached. Yeah.
Maybe Chris can tell us what really informed this particular decision. Why did the IEBC, really cutting it close to the general election, come with this particular announcement? And we don't have any, rhyme or reason on why we should have a one fell swoop announcement on the material day.
Yeah, thank you, Debarl. I think speaking from a perspective of the decision of the Court of Appeal in terms of resource management for the general election, the court was very clear in its decision in terms of the announcement and declaration of results, especially for presidential results. The court decision says that that election will be held at the constituency level, and it will end at the constituency level, and it will be announced by the returning officer at the constituency level. And I think that informs the decision by the commission in terms of, making sure that whatever operational activities that are done by the commission complies with the decision of the court. And hence, the Commission has decided that it is not necessary for any periodic updates for particular constituencies as it happened before, because the results would have been declared anyway at the constituency level. The work of the National Tallying Center and the National Returning Officer is to collate those results from the constituencies and eventually declare a winner. So it is not necessary to do periodic announcements at the National Tallying Center.
All right, so since now we'll be having that done from the constituency level.
Yes, the results will be declared at the constituency level as per the ruling of the Court of Appeal in terms of resource management.
All right, so this is in tandem with the ruling?
This is in tandem with the ruling of the Court of Appeal.
All right, thank you very much. Let's hear from Irungu Houghton.
So I think the first thing that IEBC probably needs to recognize is that that the scenario that we're leaning into will be the scenario of 1 million opinions and 1 million facts and 1 million assessments and 1 million results. So they have to manage the narrative, and simply going silent for long periods of time, as we saw in 2013, does not allow for confidence to be maintained in this period. So there will be need for IEBC to manage that process. But having said that, I think it's really important at this point that we do recognize that we have only one referee, we have only one institution that can actually pronounce results. And all the other opinions really are, as I say, opinions. And if they're particularly the case of contestants, including the incumbent president, they are simply the opinions of players. It's like a football match. Players can have opinions, but actually what is important is the referees. If the referee misjudges the moment, we have recourse as citizens, as voters, as political parties, and we can go to the courts and we can use the structures of party agents and polling agents to essentially, and observers, to essentially challenge the results that are announced by the IEBC. So I think that's the first thing that we need to react in terms of this statement, but they have to manage the narrative.
All right, thank you. Dr. Shem, Ochuodho.
Debarl, firstly, by way of declaring interest, I have issues with IEBC in the appeal court. They're trying to block me from running. We also still with them in court in terms of diaspora participation. So despite me having issues with them, I think generally the commission has done reasonably well this time round, of course, with a number of roadblocks. But yeah, still I would give them a plus.
But why are you being barred from running?
That we presented cash instead of banker's check. Cash is legal tender. They told my guys, I was in Rwanda when the nominations were taking place. They told my guys to go get a banker's check. Come back 30 minutes later, they are told you out of time. So I have been to tribunal, I've been to high court, I've been to JR, I've been judicial review, that is. I'm now in the appeal court. We are hoping that the matter will be determined next week. But that's a separate issue. For me, it's a question of just testing also our judicial system. I think it leaves a lot to be desired. But having said that, and particularly the IEBC tribunal is a kangaroo court, I can tell you that for a fact, having been through it. But having said that, I also have issues. I was really looking at my constitution, Article 86 again.
Yes.
This is one few areas where I disagree with the appeal court. I was looking for the word final. It doesn't appear in Article 86.
Article 86.
It doesn't say any final. And we've talked about this issue here before, Debarl, during AM Live. It says that the results from the polling stations are openly and accurately collated, that is 86C, and promptly announced by the returning officer. But the word final is not there. So what I have a problem with is, we do know that there are some hotspots, talk of Kiambu area and the like, Jubilee strongholds, or Kisumu and the like, NASA strongholds, where maybe a returning officer with a gun on the head is told you announce these results. Or even the people surrounding the tallying center saying that it's either this or not. And I wonder, do we under those circumstances say they are final and leave it to court to determine? So my thinking is that IEBC is trying to circumvent in a way here a decision of the appeal court by what they are talking about. But it's for IEBC to say that. I'd expected them more to have gone to the Supreme Court rather than to try to circumvent a decision of Superior Court. But it doesn't look good. It's dicey. And to that extent, as I said, I don't quite agree with the decision of the appeal court, but that's my opinion.
All right. Let's see from Professor Nyamweya.
Yeah, on that issue, on my opinion, will be that because this is a public matter and it's on a public opinion, so I could think that the court, the IEBC, should make sure that because we're going to get the matter anyway, we have the results anyway, they should also be able to update in line with us, because otherwise somebody else is going to, like the media, who is going to do their own tallying and then try to say that the IEBC has refused to do that. Whatever they'll put forth is what the people will believe. Why am I saying that? Most of the population of this country is not as informed. They make judgments from what they hear. And whoever is going to tell them, the first thing they will hear is what they're going to believe. So if the IEBC is going to stay silent and not do anything, then the people, whatever they will hear first is what they'll say. The media said so-and-so has won, and that is what we go with. So by the time the IEBC comes in, people have already made decisions because of the fact that they're not well informed. That's why in most places, like the United States, we have the media, who call elections, because whatever the commission is going to do, the media has it. So the media does it ahead of them because of public opinion. You know, it's a public matter. So it does not belong to IEBC. Right. And they have information, so they go ahead and declare the election.
Yeah, but the media has not even been given that latitude to do it, because the IEBC chair was very categorical that even the media were not going to believe your results as well. So the IEBC is the final arbiter or the final announcer on this matter.
Debarl, that is a constitutional mandate of the commission.
Yes.
It is not the chairman who is abrogating that role. It is the Constitution of Kenya that gives the IEBC the mandate to declare results of an election in this country. And therefore, whatever the commission does is in line with the requirements of the law. Let me just talk a bit about resource management, the hot topic that we are talking about. First of all, when you talk about resource management and the decisions of the courts, especially the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
Debarl, in this election, the resource management is going to be very transparent, very open, and very accountable. First of all, resource transmission will happen at the polling station, not at the constituency level. Our systems that we put in place are going to transmit results direct from the polling station to the constituency level, to the national level, and at the national tallying center. Now, these results that are coming from the polling station are going to be public. The moment they are transmitted, they are available for the public. They are available to the media. We have had a discussion with the media on Tuesday at Bomas. We invited the media, and we have already agreed on the modalities of sharing with them the results as they are transmitted from the polling station, not at the constituency level. So when results are transmitted from the polling station, the media is going to have special access to those results, and that is what they are going to project to Kenyans.
Yes.
Because those are the authentic results that are going to be the outcome of the election. Now, what happens in terms of the Court of Appeal decision? The Court of Appeal says that the results as declared by the returning officer at the constituency level are final. Now, how do we have to take care of that? What we have done in our resource management system is that once results are transmitted by the presiding officer from the polling station, the returning officer at the constituency tallying center will be seeing those results live as they are transmitted. And their work is to just verify those results. Nothing, no changing, nothing. And so at the national tallying center, the national chairman cannot change those results. They just verify them and look at them as they have been transmitted by the presiding officer. Ideally, what this means is that the results transmitted from the polling station are final. And therefore, there's a lot of accountability that we put in place. These results will be available in the public. The declaration form 34A for purposes of presidential election at the polling station will be available to the public. Immediately they are transmitted, it will be available to Kenyans, it will be available to the media, and it will be available to all the stakeholders in the process. What is the work of the National Tallying Center? The work of the National Tallying Center is to collate those results as they are transmitted from the returning officer and the presiding officer. Collate, not to change. Collate and announce the final results. And that informs the opinion that the Commission is not going to do periodic updates on constituencies, because those results will be public anyway. People would already have known them. What is the purpose of the commissioners going to announce something that is already in the public? Besides, we are going to project those results electronically. It is going to be available in our website real time. As they come in, you can log on to the website and see those results. So that declaration and periodic updates by the commissioners is neither here nor there. Just to comment on something that my colleague here has said about the United States. First of all, the United States does not have an electoral management body. They do not run elections through an electoral management body. The elections in the United States are run by counties, the county governments. Yeah? But because of trust in our country, that is why our elections are expensive. Because we have an electoral management body which we fund heavily, we invest in technology heavily because of trust, not because of anything else. It's just because of trust. Can you imagine, Debarl, Governor Kidero running elections? Will Sonko agree to those results? If Governor Kidero's people run those elections here, it's because of trust. We don't trust each other, therefore.
If he's running as an incumbent?
Yes. And that is what happens in the United States.
Will you trust that particular result?
Well, that is the question we need to be asking ourselves, all of us here. It is because of trust that we actually have an electoral management body, which again we don't even trust as Kenyans. You understand our problem?
Right.
Our problem is not technology. Technology does not eliminate the trust issue. Technology is an enabler of processes. You understand that? The people matter a lot in technology. If you look at technology, Houghton and Shem will tell you, it starts from the people that manage it. What we say in technology is garbage in, garbage
out.
Yes. So we need to be conscious with ourselves.
Thank you.
In the United States, results are transmitted to the media, not to an electoral management body.
Right. Professor, you have a reaction on that?
For point of collection, is to think in the United States, there are bodies that run elections because they are called county bodies. Why? Because they have been decentralized. So the problem with ours is that we have centralized it. So you cannot run an election without a body that runs it. So if you're talking about, for example, a county, DeKalb County has its own election board, election commission, which runs elections. But it's because of that decentralization, and when you talked about the people trust, and that's the issue we're having here, because in Kenya, people cannot be trusted. And when we talk about a system, the system is talking about that we have put a system in place, is that the system is already broken from the people, because Kenyans are known not to be truthful. But when you talk about the US system, that he has mentioned, that the people are trustworthy. They'll do what they're likely to do 95% of the time. But because of that, and because of the repercussions that come after, if you maybe tamper with an election matter or do corruption, you'll still be detected. But for us to do it here, it's not easy. So that's why we need to look at that issue, that is it okay that we centralize this thing and went electronic in the first matter, because that creates a lot of room for fraud in the first place. And when you talked about transmission, live transmission, and then the IEBC is not going to announce periodically, if they have put it on the website, for example, then the media is likely to put it up. Then they should give the media to pick it and keep live updates if they're not going to do it. But at least people need to be informed, where are we? So that heighten that tension among the people, the expectants. Yeah.
Okay, so now we want to drill deep and now look at the biggest debate has always been manual and electronic system. You say, of course, the systems, the hardware, they have no problem at all. It's the people behind who are running the hardware that they do have the problem. But from your reactions, of course, you've been observing this and the debate since now we actually were, getting to maybe the crescendo of it as we're heading towards the general election. What has been your reaction? Do you think we should actually trust the electronic system that we have, right? We're talking about the BVR, the EVID, and of course, we're looking also at the RTS, the transmission system, and the presentation system as well.
The debate between manual and electronic is interesting because, first of all, when you look at our system, it's not 100% electronic to begin with.
Yes.
We just have electronic bits, I think, at the beginning and at the end, to put it simply.
Yes.
Most of it is manual. We actually cast a paper into a ballot box, which is manual. So that's the first thing that this conversation usually forgets. The second thing is that, and I stand to be corrected, there's no system in the world that does not have a manual backup at the end. So what we need to agree on is how many steps of electronic backups we have before we actually get to the manual system. And what we've always pushed for as ELOG is that that needs to be made known and publicly known and accepted, so that people are aware, they're not in shock when they go and find that this first electronic system doesn't work, then there's this other system, then there's that system. So all those steps should be made available, they should be made known, and people should understand those various steps. So then you get to the question of trusting the electronic system that we have now procured, so what we currently have now, EVIT and for results transmission. I think we can only trust it as far as you can also trust the people. Technology works when it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then we'll have to go back to the people involved. So that's it. I think for ELOG, we have always pushed that what is important is that people are involved every step of the way. So we are familiar with the technology, which IEBC has been doing. They've improved dramatically. In the beginning, in terms of information and voter education, it was a bit low, but now they've improved. So what we need is that people work with the process. So people know what the technology looks like. They know what the technology is supposed to do. They can actually see it working, and they can go through the steps. And so the process is predictable, and once it's predictable, then you have a little bit more confidence in the process. Yeah.
Right, let's hear from Irungu, because first of all, they said that IEBC has been very cagey, especially to tell the public what is the alternative in case now the system fails, right? They've not been, and I also NASA think they're still in court trying to push that envelopes on. They want to know what is the alternative in case the electronic system fails, and as she says, of course, we have the electronic system failing, but what are the backup systems that we need to know as a public? Don't we have a right to know the system that they are talking about?
So, Debarl, I hear the question. I'm going to come from a slightly different perspective. I think one of the conversations that we must grapple with at the moment is, do we have a response-able system? The second one is, do we have a response-able people, of electorate? And I'm going to touch on that a little bit, because I think the greatest safety for us over the next 3 weeks is really ensuring that our voters come out and vote in large numbers. Everybody brings out their relative, their friends and their strangers and their enemies. Everybody comes out and vote. The second thing is that people essentially ensure that their votes count, that there is no rigging, there is no tampering with the process, and we need Kenyans to understand that there are at least 17 election offenses that can be committed either by the state or by other citizens. And they need to be able to note them and be able to be vigilant around them and know what to do when they happen. So a number of us have been thinking about, how do you get a consciousness and a set of numbers into the hands of people, so that if the IEBC acts irregularly or against the law, or if a party does that, they're able to take action. And the third and the last one is this, is that at the moment we have a narrative in this country that suggests that we only have two options in terms of the elections as voters. Mm-hmm. The first is peace at all costs. If your vote is rigged, please just go home, bunker down and watch movies for the next 2 weeks. And this is what some people have been telling us that we need to do. Other people have been telling us, no, hold back the possibility of violence and defiant action in order to safeguard your vote. And I think those two are probably false options that we're giving Kenyans. Constitution states, Article 81, yes, all Kenyans have the right and to vote with freedom from violence, intimidation, bribery, and rigging. Why are we being forced to take one or the other two options? Why can't we not accept that rigging is a form of violence, violence is a form of rigging? These are two sides of the same problem. So I think for me, the question really that we need to keep pushing on is, are Kenyans response-able for these elections? And I think the key thing there is people need to understand the election offenses. We're launching a campaign in the last week of the elections that will play out across Nairobi and Kajiado. We're planning to reach 2,000 voters. Hopefully they will reach another 4,000 people, with the understanding that if they are able to understand what is the moment that we have before us, then they will be able to safeguard whether it is a manual system or an electronic system. And in that way, you have response-able people that are able to safeguard a response-able system.
All right. Dr. Shem Ochuodho, you think they've been cagey with the information, IEBC, on the alternative?
Debarl, maybe before that, I wanted just to confirm the point Chris was making, that Article 86 B says IEBC shall ensure the votes are cast, counted, tabulated, and the results announced promptly by the presiding officer at each polling station. I think that's what the Constitution says. But there is a failure of Parliament in this regard, because to bring into effect that Article 86, Parliament would have delved deeper, because I do know Kenyans are cagey, firstly because of in the past interference with the results, that and vote stuffing. Those have been major problems in past Kenyan elections. I'd hoped that Parliament and or perhaps IEBC would have refined a mechanism that was agreed and approved by Parliament to say, and that would have also solved the problem that you're talking about of
Are you saying Kenyans, the citizen, or Kenyans, the institutions? When you say Kenyans are cagey, what do you mean?
Mostly the citizens, but I guess also the politicians, and understandably so. But sadly, the very politicians,
why would the citizens be cagey?
Because in the past, I mean, public domain, it's been public knowledge that there have been voter stuffing, there have been interference with elections in the past, rightly or wrongly. And I would claim, as a past candidate, I had confidence. I have evidence. In one of my polling centers, Nyalkinyi, in Homa Bay County, I remember my opponent had 120% of the vote cast. Obviously, in that case, something was not right. because I do know so there were cases in Tharaka Nithi and others. So Kenyans would be forgiven for being cagey. But the point I was trying to make, Debarl, is that I would have been happier if particularly parliamentarians had refined this further. So for example, if we're talking about backup, what processes, what procedures does one go to move from the first main system to the first backup? And as Regina, Chair, was saying, you could have various levels of backups. You could have 2 backups, you could have 3. But again, she was right to say, as Kenya Diaspora Alliance, we try to look at, are there any countries in the world that have purely electronic systems? We looked at Brazil, we looked at India.
Let me just interrupt you for a minute. With great respect, because we are good friends.
Right.
We are 240 hours away from the elections, roughly. Right? If you work out the days, you work out the hours. This is not time where we can create new systems. So we need to be clear, and I'll push it back to you. We need to be clear, what is the system and what is the recourse should it fail? We don't have time to create new systems. Even going to court at this stage to create a judicial decision will not give an operational opportunity to the IEBC to create a system that we can trust. So I wish my good friend, what should we do in the next 240 hours?
I wish my good friend Houghton had allowed me to develop the point I was making. I think it's important to accept there was a failure. But then the issue is, if we fail to come up with regulations that were accepted across board, how do we move from one failure to the next? Because we recognize that at some point, whether it's the 10th level, we must go back to a manual. But what are the processes to go through that? That's the point I was trying to develop. My take is that if the main electronic system fails, I'm not sure there is a second, but Chris can tell us, a second backup electronic system. If the first one fails, the next one fires up. If that fails, then we go semi-manual. Semi-manual, in my view, would be asking people, because people would be coming with their IDs and their, for identification. So, of course, there's the voter register, and with the ID and with the facial, because the photo is available. One then can say, look, in this circumstance, the biometrics has failed. Do we go to facial identification and ID before we go to...
Let's say from Chris.
Or passport, if that is what they registered with. I think it's very important people remember that
passport
whatever they registered
is a valid document.
That is what they should bring, not a photograph of their grandmother or their children. It's very important. Those 2 documents are really critical.
True. You cannot really underestimate that point, because also civil education has not been done very adequately by IEBC on what people should present. Chris, you want to react on this. So what is the alternative? Because up to now, we have no sorting idea on what you have planned as a backup in case this electronic system fails.
Debarl, I think I'm a bit disappointed by especially Shem and Irungu here. And my sister from Ilog. These are people who have been involved in elections. I think they would be more keen on understanding and following up on what the Commission has been doing in terms of putting in place systems and mechanisms to ensure that if there is a failure of one primary system, there's a fallback and a fallback. I think I'm a bit disappointed because this is very clear, and we've said it several times. And this went through Parliament. We have regulations. The Election General Regulations, Regulation number 68 of 2017, which stipulates step by step what will happen if a primary system fails. We have Regulation number 69, the ICT regulations for the Commission of 2017, which stipulates what will happen if the primary system fails. And this is in the public domain. It was taken through Parliament. They were passed, debated, they were published in public.
Maybe because we are on national television and we are again 240 hours away.
Yeah,
you could just tell us, as non-lawyers, what is going to happen.
Exactly.
Just tell us, build some confidence in the Republic.
But what I was saying, just to the build-up to what I want, to the point I want to make, is that I'm a little disappointed that these people have not exposed themselves to these documents, which are actually in the public domain.
All right, so
now,
just a moment. So the question is,
protect Chris.
All right, just a moment, Chris. So are you saying that also NASA, they're none the wiser on the articles that you are quoting here, and so they've gone full steam ahead to actually register this matter in court because they've not gone through the Constitution?
Debarl, if you look at the case that was presented by NASA, I'm not sure whether you know that it was actually dismissed.
Yes, he said.
It was dismissed. And the judge that dismissed it gave grounds for that dismissal, isn't it?
Yes.
So let us read that judgment and then make an opinion out of it. Because we have systems in place for backup. Number one, I will tell you in regulation number 69, the ICT regulations of 2017, that we have the Kenya Integrated Electoral Management System, which is the primary system that we are going to use to run the elections of 2017. Now, as my sister from ILOG has said, the Kenya Integrated Electoral Management System has components. Component number 1 is the BVR system, the biometric voter registration.
Yes.
Component number 2 is the candidate registration and management system that we use to nominate candidates. Component number 3 is the EVI, the electronic voter identification system, which will be used to identify voters on election day. Component number 4 is the electronic results transmission system, which forms the part of the Kenya Integrated Electoral Management System. Now, each system has a role in its own way. For example, when we go to registration, we use the biometric voter registration. This is purposely for registration of voters and capturing biometrics as the primary identifier in this system. Now, at this point, when we are 240 hours, you say, to the elections, the biometric voter registration's role is more or less finished, because we've already exported our data to the electronic voter identification system, which now sits in a tablet, which I believe most of you have seen us demonstrating. And if none of you have seen, today at 9:30 we are doing a similar demonstration to the public at Bomas. So if you watch TV, you'll be able to see what we'll be doing, or if you have time, you can pass by Bomas and we'll be demonstrating how the EVI will be working on election day.
I wish you came with the EVI here also to demonstrate.
I should have. If you had told me, I would have, Debarl.
I was none the wiser to do that.
Yeah, because we really want to expose Kenyans to this technology. We want to be very open. We want to be, to showcase. We want Kenyans to know what they are going to use. We want Kenyans to know, to have the expectation when they arrive at a polling station. What is the procedure? What will be required of them, and what gadget will they be using to identify themselves? This is for purposes of accountability and transparency in the electoral process. Now that we have exported our data to the EVI, this is the data that we are going to use to identify voters on election day. Now, the electoral procedure as published even in today's newspaper, if you have read it, when you arrive at a polling station, the primary method of identification is the biometric. Number 1 is you have to provide your identity card or a passport,
right,
if you registered with it.
Right.
Why do we ask for that?
I'm sorry to that
because,
yes,
Debarl, just one moment.
We need to take a short break.
Yeah, we ask for that because for you to vote, you must be a Kenyan citizen. What proves you're a Kenyan citizen? Your ID or your passport, isn't it? And that's why we ask for it. But the primary identification method is biometric.
It's biometric, but also the question that maybe people are wondering is of course, the algorithms that are they're known, and the research has it that yes, 95% of it is accurate. What about the 5% that can actually tilt the results, when we come to the general election? How do we cover that 5%? Because 1% is very key. Remember, also Hitler came to power because of 1%, the vote of 1%. Right, let's continue with this conversation, and I pick from you, Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
Debarl, I wanted to compliment IEBC for the Kenya Election Integrated Management System. In the past, some of us in the technology space have said, look, why do you need a different biometric for EVID for identification and biometric for registration? Because even locally here, there are telecom operators or mobile money operators who have got a system that does both. So I'm glad that that integration has taken place. However, Chris was talking about the electoral regulations, which I do appreciate, are in place. But two things are missing in those regulations. One, there is talk of complementary system. Nothing in those regulations prescribes what that complementary system should be. Secondly, I do know that there is the Form 32 that Chris was talking about that prescribes how one moves from a primary to a secondary system. But the question he perhaps ignores, or IEBC or the crafters of the regulations ignored, was that there are certain areas, particularly Kiambu and Kisumu, I gave us an example, but the others you can highlight. How about cases where agents of the opposing camp are all chased away? And we know this has happened, or are compromised, even equally bad. And we know this has happened in the past. Will they be there to sign that Form 32A or not? So these are realities that have happened. And I do appreciate effort was made to come up with the regulations, but we do not have to be defensive. It's good to accept that there is an oversight here, but it's still not too late for the actors to agree that in the event that the unexpected happens, that agents are chased away or whatever, that there is this mechanism that will take care of it. But I wanted finally to say, I wish we had gone the full hog of electronic voting. Mobile voting, M-Vote, M-Kura is already available. When I talk about M-Vote and M-Kura, people ask me, well, which country has used these technologies? And I always say, before Kenya used mobile money, which other country did? The world is looking towards Kenya. Kenya's got prowess in this sector. And I'm hoping in the next elections that we go this full hog. I would have been very happy, particularly for the expectant mothers, the blind, and so on, even in these elections, because their numbers are not that huge. We would have piloted, but we have lost that. I'm hoping that immediately we are done with this election, we start working on mobile voting. Finally, Professor was talking about the US being distributed, Kenya being centralized. In the UK, actually for more than 100 years, the UK didn't have a public election management body. It's only until 5 years ago that they have one. The elections have in the past been centralized, being done by ERSL, Electoral Reform Services Limited. But the point is trust, and I think we all agreed on this, that where there is trust, it is very possible. You don't have to worry about too many things. But I'm hoping that with the new educational system being introduced, down the line, Kenyans will be able to trust our systems. But having said that, I said at the beginning, I give IEBC a plus, despite the glaring problems.
Let's hear the reaction from Professor Nyamweya.
Yes, on what Ochuodho said about the going electronic. If you read a few research that's been done lately about election technology, you realize that everybody is receding away from election technology because the studies that were conducted in Germany, Switzerland, the United States, they discovered that because we can't trust systems, why? Because they're run by people, they are mostly prone to fraud. And what women? When you talk about a vote is something that does not have a history. And since a vote does not have history, if by any chance you're doing electronic voting and then there is a fraud, it's very difficult to audit where the fraud occurred. So I'll give you an example. When I was a student at Auburn University, we designed a voting machine called Prime 3. With one Gilbert. And one Gilbert, after we finished it and piloted it, one of the small elections, he went to the state senate, the US Senate, he wrote a bill to try and see whether we can go electronic nationally in the United States. So it was done by Senator Feinstein, and he was the expert to testify on that. After they did everything and said that could be our recourse from making sure that we don't have what occurred in Florida, after they presented everything else, one of the professors from Stanford came in and asked, yes, you can do it, but after there is a fraud or there is malfunction of the elections, how do you audit that system? How do you audit the vote? Because of lack of history of the vote is because he will ask, one of the questions he asked that if there is a vote that was done electronically, the question is, who voted? Is it me? Is it the dog? Is it the system? Because it's just a vote. It does not have a name on it, does not have a serial on it, it's just a vote, and all of them look the same. So his argument was, if the people who are aware of voting, the people who are experts, can write a script on the background, and they will be saying that after every 5 votes, the script votes 3 more votes for one candidate. When you come back, how do you audit that? Because elections are supposed to be auditable. You can't audit a vote. So that's why you saw after that, they just went, almost everybody went back to manual. Technically, it's a manual system that is electronized because you cannot vote electronically in the US. You vote, the vote is printed out, you pick it and drop it, but it's counted as you go in, so that in case there is a malfunction, then you can go back and do a recount. That recount issue is why you don't, people don't trust electronic voting. I know Brazil has used a full-blown, wherever, it's the only country that has done that. But if you look at the studies that have been done, it's not, you cannot trust full electronic voting because of the issue of auditing and a recount. How do you audit the vote?
How do you audit the vote?
Clarification on that regard. Skepticism is something I'm used to. In the 80s, when some of us were struggling to get computers into Kenya, there was a lot of the issues, the excuses that are being used. In the 90s, when we struggled to bring internet into this country, the same. So I'm not surprised when people talk like this. But having said that, and I wanted to say, I think the first country on earth to go electronic was Estonia. very good solid system with a smart card. But having said that, the problems that a professor is talking about, I would want to encourage him to focus more on getting solutions, because innovators in the next couple of years will have found there are challenges, of course, cybersecurity, hacking and all, but these are issues that day and night there are people addressing to find solutions.
I guess that's why we're having this forum. Yeah, you probe the question, actually the ills of the system, and we try to see how we can rectify them. And also, Chris should tell us, if these are the points which are being raised, and of course is not foolproof, then how then do we audit? How do we audit, as he's saying, because there's no historical background to it, to the voter? It could be a dog, it could be a chicken, it could be your grandmother, it could be my grandmother.
Or our ancestors.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Debarl, as she had mentioned earlier when she spoke about the process of voting in Kenya, our system is not fully electronic. It is semi-electronic, because we do biometric voter registration, we do biometric voter identification, but we cast our ballot manually. You are issued with ballot papers, you go and mark them manually in our booth, then you come and drop them in a ballot box. They are counted manually, tallied rather manually, and then they are filled in the statutory forms manually. Then from there, we have another electronic process where those results are transmitted electronically. Now, when it comes to the issue of auditability of the system, especially for our Kenya Integrated Elections Management System, I will start from the law that created this system, the Elections Amendment Act 2016-2017. Now, that law talks very well, it talks exclusively about a system that is simple, verifiable, and auditable.
Sure.
Talks about it, section 44 of that law, which mostly deals with technology. Now, what have we done to comply with this law? We have put in place a system that is auditable. Number one, for purposes of verification, which is electronic, for purposes of registration, which is electronic, and for purposes of results transmission, which is electronic. What have we done in EVI, which is electronic voter identification? First of all, for you to be identified, we have a register in that device. And that register contains your biometrics, contains your fingerprints, it contains your alphanumeric data, and it also contains your image, which is a picture. That picture that we have in our system is not a biometric picture. Sure. It is just an image.
Yep.
Yeah, because our system is not able to do facial mapping of the biometric. But it takes the biometrics of the fingers. So if the register is in that device, when you go to identify yourself, it will do a log. It will keep a log that this is Irungu Houghton, who has been identified here biometrically and has been verified to go and vote. Right. If Irungu turns up again to come and try and vote a second time, the procedure is, number one, please show me your ID or your passport. Yeah, here, put your biometric fingers here. Now, if you turn up the second time, the system will say, this voter has already been identified here, and he has voted
once.
And it will make a very big sound.
It will embarrass you publicly.
Yeah, it's an alarm.
Good.
Yeah, and when we have been showcasing this technology, part of this alarm system was not there. But it is the people, the stakeholders, when we showcased, they're the ones who gave us feedback and told us, please, at that level of somebody trying to attempt to identify twice, please put an alarm so that it can alert people in the polling station.
Right.
And we did it. And if you go to our system right now, if you come and try and identify yourself the second time, it will make a very loud noise that agents will know that, and we are going to train agents, party agents. You have a session for them. We're going to train them on how the technology works, the flags that they need to look out for in terms of these attempts of fraud, of double voting. So that is there. Now, once you have identified yourself, the system logs you and your details. Now, when results are transmitted, number one, those results are transmitted per seat. And when they are transmitted, our system also takes a log of the results that are transmitted. What are we saying? What we are saying is that our system can be audited from front to backwards. Basically, from what has been projected on the screen as the results, you can follow it to the server level which received it. It came from which device, because we've hard-coded all the devices in the server. This result came from which device in the polling station. We can know that this result came from polling station in Tharaka Nithi, device number with its main number and the SIM card number. We have put all those mechanisms in place. So we can trace it back to that device, and when we get into that device, we can trace the number of people who are identified. We can actually print a report out for you.
Let's hear from Regina. You have something to say, Regina?
No, I didn't have anything to say. I was actually learning a lot. And this is why I keep emphasizing the fact that the public needs to be aware, this information needs to be out, and it needs to be delivered in a manner that is simple and accessible for the regular citizens. So for us, it's good to refer us to Regulation 69, Regulation 68. That's brilliant. It's good that we have that. But for the regular Mwananchi, the information needs to go out as simple as possible. And it's very good that you're actually testing it out in the public and taking public feedback. So that's the kind of interaction that we need as citizens. Because technology for the regular citizen is this abstract thing somewhere here.
Yes.
And there's also the perception that it will solve all our problems. There's also the perception that our whole system is electronic, which it is not. So the continuous engagement with citizens so that they're very clear on what is happening. It is simple, it is predictable, no alarm bells go ringing except the one when you try to register a second time is very important.
All right.
And a similar point, I think, Debarl, for me is, I think there are two types of algorithms we need to be worried about.
Yes.
And for those of you who failed your maths, this is a mathematical term, like me. The first is digital algorithms. And I think, Chris, you've done great, I think, in terms of giving us a bit of confidence that we will not see the debacle that we saw in 2013, where figures just started accelerating on our screens. And we hope that does not happen again. And it would be a fraud if it happens again. The second type is a social algorithm. And I think there are three types of algorithms we need to be worried about. Yesterday there was a meeting that took place in Mathare and various other places. And there were women from 10 urban settlements who met to say that they are frightened going into the elections. They have been given quit notices. They are being told to vacate their homes. And the first algorithm for me is fear and violence. Because once you remove people from their ability to vote in their polling stations, you've started the process of rigging. It does not matter how technologically we are capable if people are not able to get to the polling stations and to cast their vote as they have done in the past. The second one for me is the issue of ignorance. And I think the ignorance is at two levels, not just how to vote, but how to vote and how to spot election offenses. So that's what we need to create. Those 19 million people who are going to the polling stations, can they also become poll watchers so that they can ensure that not only parties, but also the system, IEBC and the state, does not rob their vote of the result that they deserve. So I think those are the two algorithms on a social side that we also need to be emphasizing at this time. Last night I spent a few hours with a wonderful woman called Modoni Likimani. She's turning 92 this year, and she has voted in every election. In fact, she started voting before we had independence. Now, how is that possible? She voted in the UK as a subject of the Queen in a place called Golders Green in London. And she has stated, although she is 92, she is going to vote in these elections even if she has to be put in a wheelchair and taken to the polling station. Right. She will put that mark in her ballot paper. And the question I would ask the 9 million young people out there who are registered, if you do not vote, do you expect the quality of our democracy to change? Do you expect the leadership to change? Do you expect this economy to change? Do you expect jobs to be found if you are not casting your vote? And the last one is, why would you let Modoni Likimani, a 92-year-old woman, who has voted every year, every election since independence and before, vote for you?
Right, let's hear from Nyamweya.
Sure. Yes, I'm not trying to discount what the IEBC has done in terms of identification. They say they're using an algorithm that the system is authored. The software works in a way that once you identify yourself, you cannot come back and vote. But Ochuodho will tell you that as a computer scientist, that only works from the user interface. But at the background, people who crack code will tell you that, yes, you can do that. But what if there's a reset method, that somebody can reset the system? Is that put in place? Secondly, if you can say that you going to, wherever you set, and then it's counted from counting. How many registers do we have on the device? Right. Because you can have more than one register on the device. And if that is the case, then if the system can be this is the given device. That if it detects that you have voted for the first list, it can also default to the second one, based on the algorithm. Because we don't have the algorithm. They were not audited. And most of the literature you read or the people you've talked to, why they don't want most of the electronic to be used for such a stuff is because the code that is used to bring up those algorithms to be systems is that it's not been made public so that people can audit it and they can work what we call a walkthrough in software engineering. Then they can know where this kind of things is likely to happen. So for that reason, you can say that there is also a likelihood that you can have more than one register. There's a likelihood somebody can reset the system. Why am I saying this? During the demonstration of the kids, they were asked, what if one kid fails by midday? The lady was demonstrating said that we have 2 kids at every center, so that if one of them fails, we bring up the other one. What I didn't know is that do the 2 kids talk to each other? Or are they getting the data from the database? Mm-hmm. If they're not talking to each other, then that means that if the first kid fails and you restart the new one does not have the data or does not have the history of the other kid. So which means somebody can come and vote twice if they have the term registers on them. So
you start afresh. You start afresh from the same kid.
I think people need to understand.
Let him finish that he established. So are you done? Yeah.
So I establish the fact that if you have these 2 kids, do they talk to each other? If the other one is being used, is it updating the other one? And how quickly is it updated? If not, are they using a database? If all the kids are using the database, where are they reading from? Is it from one central place? Is it a database for a local place? Because that's the only way you're going to ensure that somebody cannot vote twice if you have 2 kids. And why am I saying that? We talked about the people issue here, about voting.
Yes.
A Kenyan will realize that there are enough papers that have not been voted by midday, and they would like to make sure that some of those papers go in because of the turnout.
Right.
What they could do is that they can malfunction the other kit and then restart the new kit. I'm just putting a scenario. I'm not saying that's what will happen, but that's a possibility that in terms of electronic identification that can occur unless or otherwise you're using the same database and the 2 kits are reading from the same database. Then they can be able to stop you from voting twice.
All right.
Debarl.
I think he raises a good question because first of all, if we had a walkthrough through the algorithms, right? We are not a computer scientists and experts on this, but yes, we had an exercise, an audit on the registration itself, right, by the KPMG, but we do not know the interface and behind the system, how they have been set or how someone can reset. Why once Kenyans given this opportunity to actually have also an auditable, algorithms, because we know of people who sit back and they change the system. Sure. I might just be getting the face of maybe one presidential candidate and a key in, but the way it's been reset is going to another. Right.
We can't afford to be, just to borrow his words of 100 and nearly
240 days. Hours.
I
have not postponed the election.
It's not a time to be...
No, it's also being skeptical, but it's good to raise this question.
It's a good point I'm trying to make here. I think Regina said 2 important things I picked. One is that the system needs to be simple. Let's come down to the level of a mwananchi.
Yeah.
Let's come out of the ivory towers to the level. She also said that it's important we manage expectations. Technology is not a panacea to all the issues, and it can never be. I think, but it's also important to recognize that whereas technology may be 90-95% reliable, okay, manual systems are much worse. Manual systems are probably 60-65%. Yeah. So to that extent, we still acknowledge that technology is not 100% perfect. Yeah. It still may have flaws here and there. Secondly, when there was talk of simplicity, this is where I want to go back again to Article 86 deals with voting of the Constitution and the regulations that Chris was talking about. 86 says whatever voting method is used, the system must be simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and transparent. So even without going into the regulations and the Elections Act, which may be a bit confusing to the ordinary Kenyan, the very constitution that they passed, 86 says that systems need to be verifiable and so on and so forth. But having said that, and this is where I discount the point Professor was raising, Chris says there will be biometric identification. How will a chicken or a dog get to go into that system? Right. Again, I'm not denying that it's 100% foolproof. But let's also be serious, and let's also be reasonable here. When Houghton talks about Madam Likimani, I also face questions from the converse, 90-year-old, a 20-year-old. My daughter in the UK,
voter.
My daughter in the UK was able to vote first. In the UK, in the recent elections, Commonwealth vote citizens. And then he asks me, Dad, how come it's so difficult for me to vote in my own country? In the UK, they send me reminders that you need to go out and vote. So these are things that we need. This is the converse. The younger ones, we are making them difficult for diaspora to vote. We need to go the full hog. But finally, I wanted just to emphasize the lack of, perhaps there is a technical committee. You know, these things that we are talking about, the very regulations Chris was talking about, came up with a technical committee which includes IEBC and the various concerned people, and even has representatives of NASA and Jubilee and so on. It's the one that needs to be delving more into this. And a number of times we have been here with the politicians from NASA and Jubilee. They say, but that committee is not meeting. So really, it's at that level where these issues need to be resolved. But that said,
thank you.
Me, I want to give the Kenyans confidence that IEBC, what they're doing so far is not perfect, but I'm happy to go with it. It's much better than what we have had.
Okay, we have a reaction from Nyamweya, then we get to Chris.
Point of correction to Dr. Ochuodho about the chicken voting. It was not about identification. That was when you mentioned that we can go foolproof. The whole system can be electronic. That's what I was saying, that when you go that way, it's not easy to audit a voter because you don't know who voted. But when it comes to identification, I was saying that it's supposed to be simple so that the algorithms that we are adopting for identification can be probably published, or a few public people who are interested can do a walkthrough. I didn't say it's not going to work, and I didn't say that it's the one that we're going to audit.
All right.
Because of simplicity, it can be shown, it can be given to the public, and they will know that this is the algorithm and it's going to work this way.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right, we will circle back with you, Chris. We have callers who are hanging on the line as well, and we have Evans who's fast up. Good morning, Evans.
Good morning.
Yeah, you have a question or contribution very briefly, sir?
Yes, I have a contribution towards the election review.
Yeah, well, yes, thank you.
Now, I can see or I can hear from the panelists.
Yes.
Saying that once you vote, the gadget is going to block, and every statement is going to be taken. So I'm asking, when you have been already identified and you be given a number of presidential, a number of voting cards for the president, how is this going to be known by other people that you are going to vote more than twice, because you are going to be given the 3 or 4 seats for the president?
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Evans. We have Dan hanging on the line. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Morning to you. You have a question or contribution, Dan?
One, I want to say this, Debarl, that the KPMG report that was given out never cured the issues that the country was raising. The very first one. And the two, we have to realize that the Kenyan electoral process is one of the most expensive processes in Africa, and I can imagine in the world. And the reason for this is actually to cure mischief. My worry is, in places where we might have more than 100% turnout, more than 100, because it has happened in the past.
Yes.
What will IEBC do about that? And have they gone out there to the village to try and educate citizens of this country how this process is going to be carried? Because civic education is very important, and I have not seen it happening in this country.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Dan from Nairobi. Robert, good morning.
Good morning, Debarl.
Good morning to you.
I have a question to your panelist.
You have a special?
I have a question to the panelist.
Yes, please.
And on my side, I'm not supporting NASA. Mm-hmm. Neither am I supporting Jubilee or any other party.
You are the undecided voter.
My question is,
yes,
we are all aware of incumbency advantage. And as I have been witnessing in our television,
yes,
the IEBC kit that they display in our television, that gadget has got some slot for putting SIM cards. Mm-hmm. What happens if the state machineries switch off the internet? That's one question. Again, we as Kenyans, I represent Kenyans, we are reading many mischief with Seloba. What happened when Chebukati was taking a oath?
Yes.
What happened that stopped Chebukati from removing the whole team of Isaac and replacing with the new team of his team?
Right, thank you.
Only that question that I need from the panelists to answer me.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I think you raise a valid question as well. Right, let's first of all get the response from Chris, and you answer also a raft of issues that were raised.
There's one so that he answers it together, and
Fantastic.
it's related, and it's not just to put IEBC on the spot, and I think it's related to what Dan also talks about KPMG. I think now that we've gazetted the voters register, there's still people who have questions because they've not found their names on the list. They've sent the SMS, they've not found their names. So it would be good to take this opportunity to just clarify to Kenyans what remedies have been put in place for those who are still having challenges in terms of not finding their names in the register, not finding their ID numbers, if their biometrics don't work. So if you just clarify that for Kenyans as simply as possible, I think that would be useful.
Right. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to respond to what the professor had said earlier in terms of, identification and the security of our devices and the real configuration of the device. The procedure that we have put in place in terms of managing the technology on election day is that we have 40,800 polling stations. Now, each polling station will have a device, a single device. And that device has an SD card inside. Now, in this SD card, it's a secure data card. All the information will be domiciled in this SD card, encrypted. Now, what happens when a device fails? We have provided 45,000 devices for the country. We have 40,800 polling stations. The rest are backup devices, and in our calculation, each ward is going to get at least 3 backup devices ready for deployment in case a device fails. What does this tell us? It tells us that our system is not a system that is dependent on the network. So we are not accessing a central database, Professor. The database is localized in the device within the secure disk card. So your identification is localized within that device. Now, what happens if a device fails? If a device fails, first of all, we have put in place a project management team of technicians, 94 of them at the county level and the constituency, 580 ICT technicians, 2 per constituency, 47 ICT experts sitting in the county headquarters. This is to support the technology that we are going to use on election day, technically. Now, when it comes to the management of deployment of backup devices, if a device fails in a single polling station, first of all, the project management team is able to be deployed rapidly to go and check out that device and find out the problem. As they go to find out, they go with a standby device, which is a backup device. If they have to replace that device with this one, what they do is that they move the SD card that was in the spoiled device and put it in the new device. What does that mean? It means that it takes back the station to the last transaction.
Right.
Yeah? So nothing is lost. The identifications that were done earlier are already captured there in the SD card. So if you come back again and you had been identified thinking that the device has failed and now you're going to vote again, it will give you the same alarm that you had already been identified here because the database is localized. And that SD card is only for a single polling station, no other polling station. Full biometrics, 700 as capped by the law. Okay? So there is no room for manipulation of numbers here. What are we saying? What we are saying is that at the end of the voting day, no result can be transmitted for more than the people who have been identified in that polling station. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. Meaning the system is logging every person, whether identified through full biometrics or through the complementary method which is inbuilt in the system, the alphanumeric search, the one-on-one biometric matching, which we have put in place in the system. These are all logged and kept for purposes of results transmission at the end of the election day. so that when I'm going to transmit results, the system is going to ask me if I'm putting more than the numbers that have voted. It's going to ask me the results you are trying to transmit does not match with the number of people who are identified in this polling station. So you are not able to transmit those results. Until you harmonize to the numbers is when you are able to transmit
So
those
what
results.
happens in that moment? Does the results, does the system just freeze, or does it also send a big message to all the party agents?
It does not
with a loud
freeze.
noise?
It does not freeze. There is an elaborate procedure that we've put for polling station management. When you are keying in the results on the interface of the electronic results transmission system, you are keying it in from a form 34A, which is the statutory form for results declaration at the polling station for purposes of presidential election. So this form is a pre-printed security form, carbonated. So agents will be there when you are filling after the tallying. Yeah? We've tallied all the votes, we've counted. Dr. Shem Ochuodho has gotten 200. Irungu Houghton has gotten 100. Regina has gotten, Professor has gotten. And then all the candidates are in the form. Then we put those numbers in the presence of the agents and observers. Now, once we put those numbers here in the form, we go to the system. The system has a similar interface, just like the form. So we'll go, Dr. Ochuodho, 200, Irungu Houghton, 100, Regina, 50, Professor, those numbers. And the agents have to verify that again. Then we go to the next stage of transmission, next. Are you sure you want to transmit these results? If you get to that level, our resource system cannot work without scanning the form. So when you get to the last stage where you now want to send the results, it will automatically take you to the scanning mode of form 34A. Then you have to take a scan of that picture, which also contains the results that you've typed here for purposes of accountability and verification. Now, once you have gotten to that level, you have taken the picture, the system will preview the text results that you've entered and the form. And that has to be verified again by the agents before you do transmission. Now, what happens when you do transmission? Our transmission is irreversible. Once you have transmitted for one seat, the device becomes inactive unless it is brought back to Nairobi in the factory and reset is when you can again use that seat. But once you have transmitted for any seat, the system grays out for that particular seat and nobody can transmit any other results for that particular seat from that device. It's locked, kwisha, end of story. Yeah. So it is only brought to the factory and kept for purposes of auditing if there's a petition. But again, we also extract data, those logs. And this system will be sending us periodic logs, by the way. Yeah? On election day, after every 2.5 hours, it will be sending us statistics, voter turnout, what time the polling station opened. In fact, the moment you open it, because there's an electronic procedure to open the polling station with the device, once it is open like this, it shows us in the screen like this, that this device has now opened this polling station and it's ready. And any incidents that needs to be captured for purposes of reporting to the commission, we have an interface to do that in the device. So the device is a solid device that is technically capable. It follows a workflow that is grounded in legal requirements, and therefore we have no worries about this device. We've tested it. We've thought about all those scenarios that Professor was talking about, in terms of exceeding the numbers. There was a team of ITAC people who developed the specifications. I think, Regina, you are aware. The ITAC committee that Shem was talking about developed the specifications for Kenya Integrated Elections Management System through a consultative process involving the stakeholders, the political parties, the professional bodies, Computer Society of Kenya, Communications Authority of Kenya, ICT Authority, ISACA. ISACA is the Audit Association. Yeah, so there has been a good thought process that went into developing this system.
So
in terms of putting
is the team that was mooted by the Joint Parliamentary Committee that
yes,
we're talking about?
It is the technical committee.
You've been meeting?
We've been working with them.
You've been
We've been working with them. We've worked with them all through. It is a creation of the Elections Amendment Act 2016. So all along we've been working with them even to approve the specifications for the solution.
All right, let's hear from Prof. Then we come to Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
But don't forget the question around the remedy for those whose
missing names. Now, I wanted to just make statements about the issue of the missing names. Now, through the KPMG audit, it is clear that we have a lot of clerical errors in the register. But that does not mean that the register is not good. The register is good because our primary identification method is biometrics and not your ID, Debarl. If you happen to share an ID with the Regina here, and that has happened to many people. We've gotten many calls. I think the numbers are out there, about 216,000 of those numbers, of those people who there are discrepancies in the ID numbers. What happens is if you share the ID with the Regina, if you send a text message to our number, the 70,000, it may bring you Regina's details. That does not mean that Debarl Inea is not in the register. If you come to our system and we put your biometrics, we will retrieve your details. And besides, we can still search you with your name. Can still search you with your name in the device. Huh? So what has been happening, Regina, for those people who have been missing, we actually put out an interface in the messaging system, the 70,000. If you send your correct ID and you don't get a response, it tells you to visit an IEBC office, isn't it? When you visit the IEBC office, we have a printed register there, which then we will check and find you there. And most of those people, we are finding them. Actually, all of them, we are finding them. Reason being, sometimes the ID number was captured incomplete. If it's captured incomplete, if you send it, that record will never be retrieved because that record does not correspond to that number that you have sent. Other cases that we have realized is that many Kenyans who registered with a passport, they send the ID number instead. And some of them come to our offices and we realize, especially Kenyans in the diplomatic circle, and I've dealt with many of them, ambassadors saying, I cannot find my name. But when we tell them, bring your passport number, we find them in the register. So it's just a matter of, simple clerical errors, but that does not mean the register is bad. The register is perfect. Our identification method and primary key in the system is the biometric.
What about the case in point where we had people now sending maybe the verification details, and you actually key in maybe a letter like QQ, for instance, that I have it. And then you have a county Taita Taveta, constituency Mwatate, polling station code 070, polling station Manoa Dispensary, ward Chawiwa. What will be reaction to that? Because now it seems also alphabetical letters can pick a constituency and
Debarl, I don't know if what you are reading is true, but what I know is that in the register, we have some clerical errors which the audit brought out, and the commission has always spoken about it. The commission has not been shy to say that we have clerical errors in the register that cannot be remedied within the remaining 240 hours. But that said, it does not mean the register is bad. The records are there. It is just that some of those clerical errors, they may need a longer period to resolve because there are many records and we don't have the time to
But don't you think that is where we have the tripping wire? Those clerical errors is where maybe people also might manipulate the errors for advantage.
There is no manipulation because the primary identification method is biometric. Debarl, if you look at the audit report of the KPMG of our AFIS system, AFIS is the biometric software that does the reading and the matching of the biometrics. The results from the test of our AFIS system was that it is accurate 100%. You can go and read it. It is in the IEBC website. The report is out. It is everywhere. I think many of you have come across.
The annexes and
including the annexes. The annexes are now specific.
Okay.
Yeah. If you find the annex on AFIS system, the AFIS identification system, that system is 100% solid. What it means is that if you appear in a polling station, Irungu, and anybody, for that matter, who is in the biometric voter register, you will be identified biometrically. The debate in 2016, and I remember we went to present to the Senate with our CEO that time. I think we didn't have commissioners in place. When we went to present our case during the, remember when there were heated, when there were heated arguments on the amendments, when people were fighting in Parliament, you remember, in December. And the Senate decided to be the higher house and decided to do a consultative process. We went there and did a presentation on what we thought was the best in terms of managing the complementary method when it was being introduced. Now, one of the things that we said there was that the primary identification method is biometric. And our the biometric system that we have, the AFIS system, is 100% solid. even if you have destroyed biometrics, when we pull your record and we do a one-on-one matching, the chances are that you will be identified. And people have been identified. I mean, we did a whole month's inspection and verification of the register. And if you look at the report, which again, I think we have made public in terms of the results of that exercise, again, 7.9 million Kenyans who turned up to be identified biometrically. Only a few that were not identified, but not because of their biometrics were poor, because they were not registered in that polling, they were not in that zone. So basically the system was telling them, go to this other zone where you'll find your full biometrics.
Thank you.
So the system works.
Right, just a moment. Before we come to you, we have USA as well, then we'll pick up with Dr. Shem Ochuodho and Professor as well. Usha, she's standing by with USA. Usha?
Right, got a lot of feedback coming our way. Remember, this is a topic that has been a lot on Kenyans' minds and mouths. So if you have a question or comment or anything, hashtag #AMLiveNTV, that is how you can get to us. So I'll get straight to it. We have Justice who says, I expect the IEBC to be transparent and give Kenyans free, fair and credible elections. Don't be on the government side. We have Dan who says, agreed politicians stage violence to cause confusion and scare away voters, and that is rigging, and rigging is evil. So just reiterating what Houghton had already said. We have Ambani who says, we are not perfect, but we all will strive for perfection. Let's handle the pressure as a team. We have Samuel who says, the public has continuously lost trust in public office and public institutions. Even if IEBC was credible, it is hard for people to fully trust them. Of course, this is true because other institutions are not trusted so much, but right now IEBC is in the limelight in light of the coming elections. We have Luke who says the election body is behaving suspiciously, and that is why we lack trust in it. We also have Neil who says this rigging thing makes the number of undecided voters to increase. Rather, they prefer to remain neutral. We have John Githanga who says, it is a conundrum how Kenya is one of the top most advanced African countries in ICT, but backtracking at the election level. We also have Ruben who says, if IEBC fails to provide credible election 2017 in this digital world, system of voting in the president should be amended. We have Githanga who says, flaws galore in IEBC voter register is an indication that the results will be flawed. It's too late. We also have Amani who says, we need civilized coordination to the whole process and resolve tech errors wisely. We have, finally, we have Nielsen who says, the IEBC is credible, but the process is mischievous. We all need to be smart. So those are the comments that I managed to read. But remember, the conversation goes on online, hashtag #AMLiveNTV. That is how you can reach us. And I would be happy to get the panel to address your concerns and answer your questions. Back to you, Debarl.
Yes, indeed, the conversation goes on online. So you can head over to AMLiveNTV, which is our Twitter handle. Also, AMLiveNTV is a profile name on Facebook. Remember, also, we're streaming live on Facebook as well. So you can carry on also with the conversation even as you're going to work. Thank you, Usha. Well, let's get back to Dr. Shem Ochuodho, also as we are giving also, or preparing our headline thoughts as well.
Debarl, I wanted to compliment the tweeters as well as the callers in. Very useful feedback. I think one important point to make to the Kenyan public,
yes,
particularly those who see a lot of what I would call, some call fake news or post-truths or falsified information, particularly on social media. I remember on one network where I am, somebody claimed that there was an ID, his wife's side, spouse's ID, and then the number, when you send it to the 70,000 line, somebody else's details comes up from Kiambu. And we decided to take it a step further. We went to the eCitizen database with that same number, and that same lady from Kiambu was coming up. This guy still insisted this is his spouse. We challenged him. This, we need to go a little further. Can you give us, scan an ID, even part of the ID of your wife? Then he bolted out. Now, that's the kind of scarecrow I'm concerned about. Kenyans need to be alert. There's quite a lot of misinformation and propaganda on social media that we need to contain. But that's not to say there are errors. And that's also not to say that IBC has not made acceptable effort. Just one example. Often in countries, more advanced countries, they have Data Protection Act and privacy laws.
Yes.
I feel concerned as an individual that my data is out there for anybody to extract, because initially people would just put an ID and you prop up. And by the way, talking of IDs and passports, in my case, when I went with my passport, I registered the passport. We couldn't get it until we realized that it was in my old passport, which now has been replaced. So there are issues like that, but I think these are isolated cases which are being handled. I am glad, and initially, I think IBC technical people, Chrissy and others, tend to listen to the tech world. When people say, look, instead of just identifying by one primary identifier, let's have two. Let somebody not only put the ID number, but maybe also a phone number. That's what other countries do, so that for somebody to know both your ID and your phone, that's very likely to be you. It's not, again, 100% foolproof, but it's better than just ID, because ID, somebody could guess, like Debarl, you are guessing the QQ, and then get the number out. And then in other instances, there was a suggestion that instead of giving back full details, I don't want you to display where I live or my ID number if somebody puts a name like mine. So again, IBC has, the technical people have done is they give just a section of maybe 2 or 3 digits of your ID. That kind of is some resemblance of protection. But again, the blame goes on to Parliament. We need to have Data Protection Act, and I'm hoping that in the next cycle of Parliament, we'll have so that it specifies what data can be available in the open. But a caller, Daniel, did talk about many ballots. Presidential ballots. I think people get only one presidential ballot. He probably meant the 6 ballots for the other positions. And also a caller talked about something very important, that internet could be switched off on that day. I think this is a stormy issue, but IBC has given us the assurance that they have a backup satellite system. But I must even caution, again, going back to the management of expectations, that even with those backups, still there could be a problem.
Right, and I think we don't really have time to really drill deeper. And it's important, just very briefly, because I think Professor Nyamweya also, you can maybe help us with the self of the transmission, because I can see if we look at the Business Daily, this was on the 26th, we had that telecom mast. Right, they are saying that the telecom mast to get army protection, Kenya military will be deployed to protect telecommunications mast in the 5 frontier counties during the August 8th election to prevent possible disruption of the network that will be used to relay results to the national tallying centers in Nairobi. And the question is, we are using these transmission masts, which we presume that they are actually given to other, internet service providers.
Right.
How safe are we knowing that these are, independent bodies? Yeah, they have the carte blanche to actually try and also skew the results, right? We have sniffers around. How secure are the transmission of results? And what is maybe also the algorithm behind the transmission and how to secure it? I know this is opening another Pandora's box that we can actually delve deeper and deeper and deeper on it. Maybe, Professor, you can frame it. You are the expert here.
Okay, well, thank you, Debarl. I'm happy that when you mentioned, because I was talking about registers, you mentioned about encryption of the register. So I hope that's true, because we know that...
256 yes.
Okay, so because I don't know how you've encrypted the biometrics, because knowing that is, the algorithms don't create a picture, they create the numbers, the biometrics. So I hope that section is not encrypted, because it uses recognition, which is matching. But that's a way to go in terms of encryption. When it comes to transmission of results, as you mentioned that you said you're going to send them. You did mention whether are you going to use a wireless connection? Are you going to use what kind of connection? Based on that, we know that it's very difficult to protect any information that is sent wirelessly unless you have encrypted it, which is, I hope you're going to do it. And if you're going to encrypt, I don't know how you're going to encrypt the scans. But as well as when you scan also, you should know that you're going through somebody's network. Ochuodho will tell you that you can have a man-in-the-middle attack. You can stop traffic in the middle, do whatever you want to do with it, and then transmit it, which is mostly public knowledge. So I hope that if you do encryption, then that will be one of the ways that you can protect that information going to the IEBC tallying center. Secondly, when we talk about connecting to the server, because we're going to have 41,000 gadgets which will connect. If you said we're going to use all of them to send the results.
45,000.
So this is want to be done in mostly in the evening, within an hour. So I would like to know what kind of network is that, or what kind of server you're using. It's a supercomputer, because most of the servers, when it comes to transmitting, especially when you're going to transmit, especially scans, which are pictures, they take a lot of bandwidth, and they also take a lot of computational resources. So if you're going to connect, at least mostly we can say at that time, 10 to 15,000 of them will connect at the same time. Is there a likelihood that there will be a problem in terms of connection? And finally, I want to know whether when you're going to send these results, are you going to use a virtual private network? Because that's the only way you're going to assure us that the packets that are going to be sent, which means that when you chop data into small pieces, the packets cannot be sniffed and then it can be altered, because that's possible. And why am I saying that? Because you've seen that most of the secure systems, they use a converted channel, which is their own private channel that only them can use. So I hope that you have also secured such.
Okay.
With the
I think I'll just give you 2 minutes to answer those, because I know this is a whole debate that...
Debarl, if I can caution him, those funny fellows that are in committee are also watching, I hope, this morning. And also those migrants that we find in Runda are also watching this morning. There's probably, I think there's some caution in terms of how much, but I think it's a great comment
of privacy.
Okay.
In terms of what the Commission is doing, one thing I would like to tell
very briefly as a winding up, yes.
Yeah, one thing I would like to assure Professor is that all those things you've talked about, we have our experts, security experts, who have sat down and designed this solution. It's not just a solution that we came up with one morning and decided to implement.